Blog Talk Radio.
Something's gone wrong. For all our vigilance and battle scars over the Bill of Rights, if we let the flame of freedom's torch grow cold, because there can be no torch to pass where there's no flame.
Freedom has only one enemy it cannot defeat, and that is negligence. So your presence here, now, today, is an act of reverence. Of all man's works beneath the heavens, none shines brighter than our Constitution. I think Jefferson and Paine, Adams, Madison, Mason, Franklin, I think they're looking down right now at us. I think they understand what we're trying to do, what we strive to do. Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Freedomlink Radio. My name's Joe Joseph. I'm joined tonight by my co-hosts, Gwen Caldwell and John King. Wow, what a show tonight. We have John Moore as our special guest this evening, www.thelibertyman.com, and also the author of the presentation, Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You. John, welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, Joe. Listening to my president at the beginning here, and he is my president and always will be, Charlton Heston.
Yes, sir.
It was, and the, you know, I have an Irish heritage. Listening to that music, I was wanting to start looking for my claymore to be sharpening it to take on Her Majesty's finest.
That's right.
But I don't have a claymore, and I'm not in Ireland. But I would like to get a copy of that Heston dialogue there. That is very powerful stuff.
Well, it's two speeches that he did, and I kind of spliced them in and out, but I can certainly send them to you, no problem.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I would like to make use of them myself. Well, Joe and Gwen, what are we going to talk about tonight?
Well, one thing that I'd like to start talking about is the weather and everything that's going on. I mean, your presentation that you talk about, you know, global warming, what the government isn't telling you, says a lot about the causes that
it does.
Yeah, and I'd like to kind of talk a little bit to that, because I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of these weather anomalies as the season progresses, don't you think?
Well, you hit on a very important word there, anomalies. And the mainstream weather people would like you to keep believing that what we're seeing are anomalies.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good for any journalist, and that's what we are, among other things. Being talk radio hosts, we're also journalists. We need to assume, Joe and Gwen, that our audience knows nothing. They're starting with a blank page listening to John Moore talk about these things. So let's make that assumption, that we're starting with a blank page.
Mm-hmm.
In the fall of 2005, I wrote my paper, No Need for Panic, published in January 2006. In that paper, I talked about the scientists who were talking at the time, in the fall of 2005, about the Gulf Stream. Now, before I explain what they were talking about, I need to explain the Gulf Stream, because it's come to my attention that a lot of people don't know what the Gulf Stream is. The Gulf Stream is warm water, a massive river of warm water in the Atlantic Ocean. When I say massive, it's bigger than the Nile River, the Amazon River, the Mississippi and Missouri rivers combined, moving up the east coast of Florida, past Georgia, past South Carolina. When it gets to your state, Joe, it's at Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. It now starts going east by northeast. Previously, it used to go all the way up past Long Island. Now it goes east by northeast at Cape Hatteras, goes out a couple hundred miles and stops. You can see it. I now have a link, by the way, I had my webmaster just put the link on Friday, and we tested it, and it does work at my website, libertyman.com. The United States Navy, and this link goes to the United States Navy website. They publish a brand new map every 24 hours showing sea surface temperatures. And you click on the link, and you can see what I just described in colors. They show gradients of color from very bright reds and oranges for the hotter temperatures to almost black for the colder temperatures. Now, up until June 12th last year, which we're looking at almost exactly a year now, the Gulf Stream, for many centuries, more centuries than we know, continued east by northeast, where it warmed up England, Ireland, and Scotland, warmed up Western Europe and Scandinavia, before it came down the coast of Portugal and continued south to where it made a big loop. It's called, the scientists call it the North Atlantic Thermohaline Conveyor. My paper I wrote in 2005, I said the following: the Gulf Stream had lost about 30 to 35% of its mass and velocity. The scientists at the time were saying 5 to 20 years in the future, it would stop. They weren't guessing that it would stop. They were saying it would definitely stop. Fast forward 5 years, and it did stop. June 12th, 2010, it did stop. Now, following it stopping, my credibility with radio talk show hosts like yourself, Joe, went up tremendously, because I'd been doing, since 2008, when my DVD first came out, doing a lot of guest appearances on shows all over the country, talking about what would be happening in the future. Well, when you talk about something that could happen in the future that does happen, you gain a lot of credibility, and that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, I'd rather be made a fool of and been wrong rather than be facing what we're facing right now. Now, the third and fourth week of July this past year, myself and my research team, we were in touch with Dr. Luigiani Zangari, a PhD scientist in Italy. He was telling us at the time, the third week of July, he thought the Gulf Stream had stopped. By the end of the fourth week, he determined that, in fact, the Gulf Stream had stopped June 12th, just about a month and a half before that.
Right.
Now, what he told us was the following. Now, up until he told us this, I had the opinion that most people do that aren't scientists, that the Gulf Stream affected weather along the eastern seaboard of the United States and England, Ireland, Scotland, and Western Europe. I had no idea what he was about to tell us. And here's what he said. The Gulf Stream is, or now was, the pacemaker of the climate of the planet for the following reason. It had a regulating effect, a controlling effect on the jet stream. Now, Gwen, you're in South Dakota. Joe, you're in North Carolina. I'm in Missouri. 5 miles above where we all are, no matter where we are, and all the listeners, whether they're listening live or listening on a audio recording, there's 200-mile-an-hour wind going right now called the jet stream. The jet stream is what is responsible for most of our weather. Now, you and I, anybody involved in Patriot Radio and alternative media, we hear all the time about what HAARP can do, and people are very quick to blame man-made occurrences, man-made manipulation of weather for what's going on, with no evidence to back it up. Now, as I tell people, every healthy male, every healthy adult man has all the equipment necessary to be a rapist, and every healthy adult woman has all the equipment to be a prostitute. It doesn't mean either one are engaging in those activities. And just because HAARP exists doesn't mean it's manipulating all weather all the time.
Right.
They can manipulate some weather some of the time. They can do that, and they do that. And there's evidence of that. What we're seeing right now with this bizarre weather, and going back to your original statement there, Joe, about anomalies. Anomalies are temporary, unusual, bizarre events that take place and things go back to normal. That's not what's going on here. That's not what's going on. What we're seeing now with the jet stream doing the bizarre gyrations that it's doing, and your local TV weatherman and weatherwoman on your local TV station or radio station, they'll go this far. They'll say the following. The jet stream is doing bizarre things we've never seen it do before. Well, that's true. They won't go the next step and say why. The reason why is because the Gulf Stream has stopped and is no longer regulating it. So this is what we're seeing with these bizarre weather events. And by the way, I just read it on Drudge a few minutes ago. There's more snow in Aspen, Colorado on Memorial Day weekend than there was the first week of January.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But it's not an anomaly. That's the point. It is not an anomaly. This is the new normal. The new normal is bizarre, eccentric, and strange, and weird, and dangerous.
John, what caused the Gulf Stream to stop?
I'm glad you asked that question.
That's a good question, Gwen.
That's an excellent question. First, you have to know what made it work in the first place. It was the salt content of the oceans, the salinity. The salinity of the oceans allowed this water to move, warm water to move through the colder ocean of the North Atlantic, basically making a thermal barrier between the colder water and the warm water. There's a university-level experiment, apparently it's been done a number of times and repeated a number of times. They build a clear tank about 10 by 10 feet and, maybe 100 feet long or so, and they fill it with fairly cold salt water. When I say fairly cold, maybe 50 degrees or so, 45, 50 degrees. And then at one end, they inject fairly warm, 75-degree salt water at the other end, under pressure, of course. The warm salt water will move through the cold salt water, forming a thermal barrier between the two. When you start, and there's two parts to this experiment. One part is when you start injecting fresh water into the mix, it starts breaking down the thermal barrier between the two. Now, for about 40 years, we've had increased amounts of fresh water introduced into these oceans, especially the Atlantic Ocean, from melting freshwater ice in Greenland, melting freshwater ice in the Antarctic. The melting ice at the North Pole, which is a lot of it, is floating seawater, so it doesn't change either the salinity or the ocean levels. So salinity's been reduced incrementally for about 40 years, incrementally reducing the mass and velocity of the Gulf Stream. And by the way, Gwen, and for everybody listening, there's an article posted at my website that you can read at no charge, titled "The Gulf Stream Has Stopped." Just click onto it and read it, print it out, distribute it, do whatever you want with it. It gives more details. So incrementally, up until 2010, the Gulf Stream had been slowing down. In the spring of 2010, the Gulf Stream was very fragile, was very much at risk. And then something else happened. That's the British petroleum oil spill. You take the same tank I described earlier, 8 by 8 feet or 10 by 10 feet and 100 feet long, and you put oil into the mix, it does the same thing as the fresh water. It breaks down the thermal barrier between the cold water and the warm water, and the two mix together, and the stream stops.
And what does it do when you add Corexit and synthetic organisms to that mix?
We don't know, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter because it stopped. And we can make hypothetical questions, but we do know that oil would stop it by itself. The Corexit may have an impact on it, and very likely does. But within the Gulf of Mexico, Gwen, is something called the Gulf Loop Current, which fed a very large percentage of its water into the Gulf Stream, going between Cuba and Florida and joining the rest of the water coming up out of the Gulf out of the Caribbean. We do know that oil will stop it. Whether Corexit would add to that or not, I don't know. There may be some scientists who do. Quite frankly, it's a non-issue since the Gulf Stream has stopped. And according to Dr. Zangari, the PhD scientist in Italy who works with other PhD scientists in North America and Europe, it's not going to restart. Now, the last time this happened that we're aware of, we had an ice age. And the consequence of it stopping now means one of two things, according to the scientists I'm talking to. Either the beginning of a mini ice age, which would be reduced growing season, winter being extended a month